I have received a message from Her Excellency the Governor-General recommending, in accordance with Section 56 of the Constitution, an appropriation for the purposes of the Appropriation Bill No. 1, 2025-2026. And I call the Treasurer.
Mr Speaker, I present the Appropriation Bill No. 1, 25-26 and the explanatory memorandum.
Thank you. I call the Clerk.
First reading, a bill for an act to appropriate money out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund for the ordinary annual services of the government and for related purposes.
And I give the call to the Treasurer.
I move that the bill be now read a second time, and I acknowledge the Ngunnawal people here and the Yuggera and the Yugambeh back home. Speaker, this budget builds on the progress that we have made together. It's a plan to help with the cost of living, with 2 new tax cuts and higher wages, more bulk billing and more help with electricity bills, cheaper medicine and less student debt. It's a plan to build Australia's future, with more homes, new investments in skills and education, competition reforms and a future made in Australia. Yeah. Speaker, our economy is turning the corner. Inflation is down, incomes are rising, unemployment is low, interest rates are coming down, debt is down, and growth is picking up momentum. On all of these fronts, our economy and our budget are in better shape than they were 3 years ago. Yeah. Now, this progress has been exceptional but not accidental. The credit belongs to Australians in every corner of our country. Yeah. We've come a long way together, but there is more work to do. This budget is our plan for a new generation of prosperity in a new world of uncertainty. It's a plan to help finish the fight against inflation, rebuild living standards and maximise our national advantages into the future. This is a responsible budget with 5 main priorities: helping with the cost of living, strengthening Medicare, building more homes, investing in every stage of education, and making our economy stronger, more productive and more resilient. Speaker, the global economy is volatile and unpredictable. The 2020s have already seen a global pandemic, global inflation and now the threat of a global trade war. The whole world has changed as a consequence. Tariffs and tensions abroad have been accompanied by storms here at home. Ex-tropical cyclone Alfred could wipe 1/4 of a percentage point off quarterly growth. North and far north Queensland have flooded too. Storm clouds are gathering in the global economy as well. Trade disruptions are rising. China's growth is slowing. War is still raging in Europe and a ceasefire in the Middle East is breaking down. Treasury expects the global economy to grow 3.25% for the next 3 years, its slowest since the 1990s. It's already forecasting the 2 biggest economies in the world will slow next year, with risks weighing more heavily on both. Australia is neither uniquely impacted nor immune from these pressures, but we are among the best placed to navigate them. We're emerging from this spike in global inflation in better shape than almost any other advanced economy. Growth is forecast to pick up from 1.5% this year to 2.5% in 2026-27. The private sector is resuming its rightful place as the main driver of this growth, with Treasury upgrading forecasts for growth in private demand to more than double next year compared to this one. Unemployment is now projected to peak lower at 4.25%. Employment and real wage growth this year will be stronger and participation will stay near its record high for longer. Inflation is coming down faster as well. Treasury now expects inflation to be sustainably back in the band 6 months earlier than anticipated. Yeah. Now, all of this means that the soft landing that we have been planning for and preparing for is now looking more and more likely. Because of our collective efforts, the worst is behind us and the economy is now heading in the right direction. Yeah. But there's more work to do because we know that people are still under pressure. The cost of living is front of mind for most Australians and it is front and centre in this budget. We know the welcome improvements in the aggregate numbers don't always immediately translate to how people are feeling and faring. We've made a lot of progress together, but we know that many people are still doing it tough. Our plan to rebuild living standards starts with cost of living help and wages growth. It includes more hip pocket help for households, 2 new tax cuts for every taxpayer, more energy bill relief, increasing wages and reforming non-compete clauses, more bulk billing and cheaper medicines, student debt relief, and a fair go for families at the checkout and for farmers at the farm gate. Speaker, tonight the government is proud to be delivering more tax relief. Every Australian taxpayer will get a tax cut next year and the year after to top up the tax cuts which began in July. This will take the first tax rate down to its lowest level in more than half a century. These additional tax cuts are modest, but they will make a difference. The average earner will have an extra $536 in their pocket each year when they're fully implemented. Combined with our first round of tax cuts, this is $2,190, and the average total tax cut will be $2,548, or about $50 a week. We will also increase the Medicare levy low-income thresholds, which is extra tax relief for more than 1 million Australians. Now, our $17 billion in tax cuts are the biggest part of the responsible cost of living package in this budget, but they're not the only part. Mr Speaker, electricity prices in the official data went down 25% last year, but they're still putting pressure on households around the world. 2 rounds of energy rebates have helped take some of the sting out of energy costs. Tonight we're providing another $1.8 billion in energy bill relief. Every household and around 1 million small businesses will receive energy rebates until the end of 2025. This means cutting another $150 off bills this year. The government will also be using the powers and penalties of the energy regulators and the ACCC to help ensure that energy companies offer customers cheaper deals, that pensioners receive the discounts that they are entitled to, and that Australians get the value that they deserve. Mr Speaker, at the core of our economic plan and at the very heart of this Labor government is a simple objective: to ensure more Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn. In the 5 quarters before our first budget, real wages fell in annual terms. They have now grown for the last 5. Real incomes per capita are now growing too. This is the dividend of our economic plan to get inflation down and wages up and tax cuts flowing. Tonight we're providing an additional $2.6 billion to fund pay rises for aged care nurses from March this year, so that the workers that we trust to care for our parents and grandparents get paid properly for the work that they do. We're reforming non-compete clauses to lift wages by up to $2,500 a year for workers covered by them. We've supported an historic wage increase for the early childhood educators and care workforce, and we've backed pay rises which ensure the national minimum wage has risen by almost $7,500 a year. Speaker, we know that Australians, despite all of this, are still under pressure, and a lot of that pressure is felt at the checkout. That's why we're cracking down on the supermarkets, by empowering the competition watchdog, making the food and grocery code mandatory, increasing penalties and boosting competition. At the same time, we're targeting excessive surcharging and scams and unfair trading practices that harm consumers. Speaker, a university education is a life-changing opportunity, but it shouldn't leave Australians with a lifetime of debt. This year we will cut 20% off all student loan debts, raise the minimum repayment threshold and reduce repayment rates. Combined with our existing student debt relief, we will slash $19 billion in debt for more than 3 million Australians. Speaker, in every budget, including this one, we have made medicines cheaper. Tonight we reduced the maximum price for a PBS script from $31.60 to $25. And pensioners and concession card holders will still pay $7.70 a script because we froze their costs as well. We're also investing $1.8 billion to list more life-changing and life-saving medicines on the PBS. For example, cutting the cost of a lymphoma treatment will save some Australians more than $600,000. Speaker, the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme is a great Labor creation and it's a great Australian institution. And we are strengthening it because Australians need us to, not weakening it because American multinationals want us to. A Labor government created Medicare as well, and only Labor governments strengthen it. Tonight we are proud to make the single biggest commitment to Medicare since its creation. A record $8.5 billion to lift bulk billing rates and build our health workforce. Because of this investment, 9 out of 10 GP visits should be fully bulk billed by the end of the decade. More bulk billing will mean less pressure on families. These incentives mean there will be around 4,800 fully bulk billing practices around the country, making it easier to see a doctor and get the care that you need, and saving patients around $860 million a year. This budget also delivers new incentives for doctors to train as GPs, new scholarships for nurses and midwives, and another 50 Medicare urgent care clinics. This is a $644 million investment in this budget to build on the 87 urgent care clinics that we've already opened. 4 in every 5 Australians will live within a 20-minute drive of an urgent care clinic as a consequence. Opening early, closing late, available on weekends, taking pressure off hospitals and emergency departments, and all you need is your Medicare card. Every single state and territory will also get more money for hospitals in this budget, funding that will reduce waiting times. Tonight we're locking in an extra $1.8 billion, taking our total contribution to public hospitals to $33.9 billion next year. Speaker, we're proud to be investing $793 million in this budget in women's health to create more choices and lower costs and deliver better health care for women. This funding will help Australian women save on contraception, access more endometriosis and pelvic pain clinics, and receive better support through menopause. Because for our government, women's health is not a boutique issue or a question of special interest, it is a national priority. Speaker, new plans for cost of living and health are accompanied by new investments in housing. We are tackling the housing shortage from every responsible angle, making home ownership more affordable for young Australians and for young families in particular. Our $33 billion plan will help build 1.2 million new homes before the decade is out. This includes $54 million to accelerate the uptake of modern methods of housing construction, which is all about building more homes more quickly. It supports our work to cut red tape and reduce financial barriers to more efficient construction methods. The first 2 rounds of the $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund are helping to build about 18,000 social and affordable homes for those who need them most. And lifting the cap on Housing Australia's financial liabilities to $26 billion also helps in this regard. We're making sure new properties are well located and connected to the infrastructure that they require. Our housing support program is funding the crucial roads, water and power that these new homes need. Our national leadership is incentivising states and territories to reform their planning systems to accelerate new housing supply. And to build more, we know that we also need to train more builders. That's why we're attracting more apprentices into the housing industry by doubling incentive payments so that eligible apprentices get up to $10,000 if they train up in the housing construction sector. Speaker, tonight we're expanding our Help to Buy scheme as well. This is part of our efforts to help ensure more Australians can buy a place of their own. We will update the property price and income caps so more first home buyers are eligible for the scheme. and this will help 40,000 Australians buy their first home in the next 4 years. And the changes mean that they can access a bigger range of homes and buy one that suits them. And we're easing pressure on the housing market by banning foreign investors from buying established homes and cracking down on foreign land banking as well. Speaker, a crucial part of this Labor government's economic plan relies on the transformational power of education, its power to turn aspiration and ambition into reality. And this is why we're investing in every stage of education, to lay the foundation for a better and fairer system and teach and train Australians for the jobs of the future. Speaker, this all starts with early childhood education and care. We believe every child has the right to an early education to ensure that they don't start school behind. Cheaper childcare is also cost of living relief with an economic dividend. A key part of our plan to rebuild living standards is to help people work more and earn more if they want to. That means breaking down the barriers to workforce participation. So from January 2026, we are replacing the childcare subsidy activity test with a new 3-day guarantee. This will make sure families are entitled to at least 3 days a week of subsidised early childhood education and care. We're also building more childcare centres in areas of need, investing $5 billion to expand access across the country and lift the wages of early educators, and charting a path to universal early education and care regardless of a child's background or no matter where they live. Speaker, we're also putting billions into public schools in this budget to open the doors of opportunity for more Australian children. We're fully and fairly funding public schools to help students catch up, keep up and finish school. This means public schools will finally be on track to reach the funding standard recommended in the Gonski Review almost 15 years ago. On top of this, our fee-free TAFE program will help equip Australians for the jobs of the future. Over the next decade, 9 out of 10 new jobs will require post-secondary qualifications. Almost half of these will be from vocational training. We've introduced legislation to lock in 100,000 free TAFE places annually from 2027, and we've committed $1.6 billion to fund these places until 2035 to make it easier for Australians to train, retrain and upskill. Speaker, we see this as an important way, or one way, to ensure Australians can be primary beneficiaries of all of this churn and change that we're seeing around the world. Another is by investing in our comparative advantages, or by looking for opportunities to join with our partners in new, more resilient global supply chains, by becoming an indispensable part of the global net zero economy, by preparing our people to adjust to and succeed in the new world being created right in front of us, by building a future made in Australia. Now, a big part of this depends on boosting productivity the right way to lift living standards over the long term. Now, our plan for productivity growth doesn't mean making Australians work longer for less. It's about investing in our people and doing more to unlock our potential by boosting dynamism and competition in our economy. We've created a $900 million fund to reward state governments for implementing reforms that promote competition. And tonight we are advancing this substantial economic reform agenda. We will abolish non-compete clauses for most Australian workers. Non-competes are holding too many Australians back from switching to better, higher-paying jobs. More than 3 million Australians are captured by these clauses, including childcare workers, construction workers and hairdressers. People shouldn't need to hire a lawyer to take the next step in their career, or permission from their old boss if they want to be their own boss and turn an idea into a small business. The Productivity Commission estimates that this reform could lift productivity, reduce inflation and improve GDP by $5 billion. And it could boost wages by up to 4%. We're also introducing a national licensing scheme to allow electricians to work seamlessly across borders. This will be a template for expanding national licensing to other occupations when and where we can. The PC suggests these broader licensing reforms could boost GDP by up to $10.3 billion. Mr Speaker, Australia is well placed to respond to the 5 seismic challenges shaping this new world of uncertainty. The shift from globalisation to fragmentation, from hydrocarbons to renewables, from information technology to AI, from a younger population to an older one, and all of the changes in our industrial base. Now, all of this puts a premium on resilience, and that's what a Future Made in Australia is all about. In this budget, we're investing more than $3 billion to support the production of Australian-made green metals like aluminium and iron, building on the tax incentives for critical minerals and green hydrogen that we legislated last year. We're also backing clean technologies through our Future Made in Australia Innovation Fund and by recapitalising the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. This will help develop new industries in clean energy manufacturing, green metals and low-carbon liquid fuels, and unlock more private investment. This agenda is about recognising that our future growth prospects lie at the intersection of our industrial, resources, skills and energy bases and our attractiveness as an investment destination, so that we can grasp the jobs and opportunities of the net zero transformation. Speaker, in difficult conditions, around 25,000 new businesses have been created each month on average since we came to office. Now, we respect and admire the hard work and aspiration and sacrifice behind those record numbers, which is why we're going into bat for small and local businesses in this budget, protecting them from unfair trading practices, funding our Buy Australian campaign to support local producers, providing new resources for the regulator to level the playing field for smaller players, and delivering tax relief for hospitality venues, brewers, distillers and wine producers as well. Speaker, building Australia's future also means building on the strength of our regions. That's why we're securing banking services in country towns and flights in the bush. It's also why we're investing up to $3 billion in additional equity to complete the rollout of the national broadband network. Infrastructure like the NBN is essential for communities and students and businesses and to the productivity of our nation. And so are the roads and railways connecting our regions to our cities and supporting economic growth. This budget provides $17.1 billion over 10 years for these projects, including $7.2 billion to upgrade the Bruce Highway in Queensland, the biggest ever investment in the Bruce, $2.3 billion for Western Sydney, with $1 billion of that for the rail network alone, and $2 billion towards transforming Sunshine Station, taking our Melbourne Airport rail investments to $7 billion. In total, we're investing more than $120 billion in infrastructure in every state and territory over the decade, improving the productivity, resilience, livability and sustainability of our cities, regions and communities, accompanied by $262 million to preserve and conserve our natural land and our ocean assets. Speaker, in these uncertain times, economic security and national security are increasingly intertwined. We're supporting stability and prosperity in our region by helping to shore up banking services in the Pacific. We've invested an extra $50 billion in defence by the mid-2030s to help keep Australians safe. It means defence funding will grow beyond 2.3% of GDP by the early 2030s. And we're investing $45 million in our initial response to the independent intelligence review. So, Mr Speaker, in a tight budget, we've made room to boost our defences, strengthen Medicare, help people doing it tough, build more homes and invest in the future. We've done all of this at the same time as we've overseen the biggest ever fiscal improvement in a single term of government. Tonight's budget is $207 billion better than we inherited. It's in better shape in every year over the forward estimates than it was 3 years ago. In our first 2 years, we posted the first back-to-back surpluses in nearly 2 decades. Our deficit this year has almost halved since we came to office. Next year's deficit is $42 billion, lower than what was forecast at the last election and lower than at the mid-year update. Gross debt will hit $940 billion this financial year, $177 billion lower than what we inherited. Yeah. This means we'll avoid around $60 billion in interest costs over the decade. These are some of the dividends of our responsible economic management, achieved through a combination of spending restraint, finding savings and banking revenue upgrades. Real payments growth is forecast to average 1.7% to 28-29, less than half of the average under our predecessors. We've found around $94 billion of savings since coming to government, including another $2 billion in this budget. In this term, we've banked around 70% of tax receipt upgrades, and we've made structural improvements to the budget across the NDIS, aged care and interest costs as well. And Speaker, we're repairing the budget without ignoring our responsibility to build a stronger, fairer and more inclusive society, where more Australians have the chance to contribute and share in our economic success. We're providing $1.3 billion for closing the gap and economic self-determination for First Nations Australians, with investments in remote community services, opportunities for business and support for home ownership. Tonight's budget also includes $424 million for Australians with a disability and more funding for aged care reform. There's more money to support veterans and build on the progress that we have made eliminating that backlog of claims. Yeah. And we're providing help to Australians and communities affected by natural disasters, provisioning another $1.2 billion to properly fund recovery from ex-tropical cyclone Alfred, as part of $13.5 billion in natural disaster funding for further north and right around the country. So, Mr Speaker, it's even more important and even more remarkable that Australia's economy is turning the corner when we know that the global economy is taking a turn for the worse. Our progress and our prospects validate and vindicate the decisions and the sacrifices that we've made together as Australians to bring inflation and debt down, to get wages and growth up, and to keep unemployment low. And what really matters is that we build on this platform, how we help finish the fight against inflation, how we keep rebuilding living standards, and how we maximise our national advantages to benefit Middle Australia. The plan at the core of this budget is about more than putting the worst behind us. It's about seizing the best of what's ahead of us, to build a stronger economy together and to build a future that we can all be proud of. And that's why I commend this bill and this budget to the House.
The debate must now be adjourned.
Speaker, I move the debate be adjourned.
The question is the resumption of the debate be made in order of the day for the next sitting. I'll put the question. Those opinions say aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. Call the Assistant Treasurer.
Thanks, Speaker. For the information of honourable members, I present the following